My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I'm 29 years old. 3 weeks ago, I stood on my childhood lawn watching my parents throw my belongings into garbage bags, screaming that I was a selfish thief trying to steal my sister's rightful inheritance. Today, I'm clutching my 7-year-old daughter Emma's trembling hand outside the Dallas County Courthouse, preparing for the legal battle that will determine whether we keep the home my grandmother left us or lose everything to my family's lies and greed. Before we dive into this story of family betrayal that nearly destroyed my life, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction. Trust me, you won't believe what my own family was willing to do for money, and the question my innocent daughter asked in court that exposed their entire scheme. Growing up in our middle-class Dallas suburb, the Martinez family dynamics were crystal clear from day one. My older sister Stephanie was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the perpetual disappointment who never quite measured up to my parents' impossible standards. Robert and Maria Martinez had built their entire parental identity around showcasing Stephanie's achievements to anyone who would listen, while treating my accomplishments as mere afterthoughts that barely deserved acknowledgement. Stephanie Martinez Collins, now 32, had mastered the art of manipulation from childhood, always positioning herself as the victim whenever consequences loomed for her selfish behavior. When she married wealthy contractor Derek Collins in an elaborate ceremony that cost my parents $40,000, they proclaimed it the happiest day of their lives, conveniently forgetting they had another daughter, who might someday want their support for her own milestones. They paid for her honeymoon to Europe, helped with the down payment on her first McMansion in the exclusive Plano area, and continued funding her lifestyle changes every time she decided to reinvent herself professionally. While Stephanie flitted between careers as a yoga instructor, boutique owner, and social media influencer with my parents' financial backing, I was grinding through nursing school while working double shifts at a local restaurant, surviving on instant ramen and sheer determination. When I graduated with my nursing degree, my parents attended the ceremony, but spent the entire reception talking about Stephanie's latest business venture instead of celebrating my academic achievement. The message was unmistakable. Stephanie's failures were investments worth nurturing, while my successes were expected obligations that required no recognition or support. My daughter Emma came into this world when I was 22, after her father Marcus abandoned us the moment he learned about the pregnancy, claiming he wasn't ready for the responsibility of fatherhood. Instead of offering help during this vulnerable time, my parents lectured me about making better choices and suggested I should have been more like Stephanie, who was smart enough to marry a man with financial stability before starting a family. They conveniently ignored the fact that Derek treated Stephanie more like an expensive possession than a partner, controlling her every move while my parents praised his traditional masculine authority. The one person who saw through the family's toxic dynamics was my grandmother, Elena Martinez, a fierce woman who had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but determination and built a successful life through decades of hard work and sacrifice. Elena treated both her granddaughters equally, never playing favorites or making comparisons that pit us against each other for her affection. Her beautiful two-story Victorian home in Oak Cliff had been my sanctuary during childhood, the only place where I felt truly valued and accepted for who I was rather than criticized for who I wasn't. Elena's house represented everything beautiful about family legacy. The hand-carved wooden banister she had refinished herself, the garden where she taught me to grow tomatoes and roses, the kitchen where we spent countless hours making tamales while she shared stories about our family's history and traditions. The property was worth approximately $400,000, but its emotional value was immeasurable to both granddaughters who had created precious memories within those walls during our formative years. As Elena aged and her health began declining, my parents started making increasingly pointed comments about inheritance and family responsibility, always emphasizing how Stephanie's stable marriage and financial security made her the obvious choice to properly maintain such a significant family asset. They would visit Elena together, casually mentioning how wonderful it would be if the house stayed with someone who could afford the upkeep and improvements it deserved, never directly stating their preference but making their intentions abundantly clear through persistent suggestions and emotional manipulation. The seeds of the conflict that would eventually tear our family apart were planted during these seemingly innocent conversations, where my parents gradually convinced themselves that Elena's house belonged to Stephanie by virtue of her marriage and social status rather than through any legal documentation or expressed wishes. They began treating the inheritance as a foregone conclusion, making plans for renovations and discussing how Derek's construction expertise would transform the property into something even more magnificent than Elena had maintained through her own loving care. Elena Martinez passed away suddenly on a Tuesday morning in March, her heart giving out peacefully in her sleep after 84 years of a life well lived, leaving behind a legacy of love, strength, and unwavering family loyalty that would soon be tested by the very people who claimed to honor her memory. The funeral was a beautiful celebration of her remarkable life, with extended family traveling from across Texas to pay their respects to a woman who had touched countless lives through her generosity, wisdom, and unconditional love for her descendants. 3 days after we laid Elena to rest, Attorney Benjamin Foster called all immediate family members to his downtown Dallas office for the formal reading of her will, a document that had been carefully prepared and witnessed according to Texas state law, leaving no room for legal challenges or misinterpretation of her clearly stated final wishes. The conference room felt heavy with anticipation as we gathered around the polished mahogany table, my parents exchanging confident glances while Stephanie fidgeted with her designer handbag, clearly expecting confirmation of what they all assumed was a predetermined outcome. Benjamin Foster, a distinguished gentleman who had served as Elena's attorney for over 20 years, opened the sealed envelope with ceremonial precision, and began reading in his measured professional tone that would forever change the trajectory of our family relationships. The will was straightforward and unambiguous. Elena's beautiful Victorian house, along with all its contents and the surrounding property, was left entirely to me, Rebecca Martinez, while the remaining estate assets totaling $50,000 in cash and investments would be split equally between both granddaughters. The silence that followed Benjamin's announcement was deafening, broken only by the sound of my mother's sharp intake of breath and the creaking of chairs as everyone processed this unexpected revelation that contradicted months of assumed family planning. My father's face turned an alarming shade of red as he struggled to contain his immediate outrage, while Stephanie's perfectly composed facade cracked just enough to reveal the calculating fury burning beneath her practiced smile. "This has to be some kind of mistake," my mother Maria declared, her voice rising with each word as she refused to accept the legal reality that had just shattered her carefully constructed expectations. Elena was getting confused toward the end. She couldn't have meant to leave everything to Rebecca while Stephanie gets practically nothing. This isn't fair to either of our daughters. The irony of her sudden concern for fairness wasn't lost on me, considering she had never worried about equity when showering Stephanie with advantages while expecting me to succeed without any parental support. Robert Martinez stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor as he began pacing the small conference room like a caged animal, muttering about family obligations and proper estate planning, while completely ignoring the fact that Elena had made her choices as a competent adult with full legal capacity. "Elena must have been manipulated," he announced with conviction, pointing an accusatory finger in my direction, as if I had somehow hypnotized my grandmother into rewriting her will through supernatural powers of persuasion. Stephanie finally found her voice, employing the victim narrative that had served her so well throughout our childhood whenever reality failed to match her expectations of special treatment. "I just don't understand why Grandma Elena would do this to our family," she said, tears forming on command as she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Rebecca knows how much Derek and I love that house, and we're in a position to really take care of it properly. This is going to tear our family apart." The manipulative brilliance of her statement was remarkable. She had positioned herself as the injured party, while simultaneously suggesting that I was responsible for any future family discord. As I sat there absorbing the magnitude of Elena's gift and the immediate hostility it had generated, I realized that my grandmother had seen something the rest of the family had missed or chosen to ignore. She understood that I would cherish the house for its emotional significance rather than its financial value, that I would maintain her garden and preserve the family traditions that had been nurtured within those walls for decades. Elena had witnessed how Stephanie and Derek talked about renovating properties as investment opportunities rather than family legacies, and she had made her decision accordingly. Benjamin Foster attempted to restore order to the increasingly volatile situation by explaining the legal validity of the will and the proper procedures for any potential challenges, but his professional expertise was no match for the emotional tsunami that had been unleashed by Elena's final act of love and wisdom. My parents demanded to see Elena's medical records, suggesting that anyone who would leave such valuable property to their younger daughter must have been suffering from dementia or undue influence from manipulative relatives. The drive home from the attorney's office was conducted in complete silence, but I could feel the weight of my family's rage pressing against me from every direction as we processed the implications of Elena's decision. That evening, my phone began ringing with calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins who had somehow already learned about the will reading, each conversation revealing how quickly my parents had mobilized their campaign to portray me as an opportunistic villain who had taken advantage of an elderly woman's vulnerability. Within 48 hours of the will reading, Stephanie appeared at my apartment with her own attorney in tow, a smooth-talking friend named Thomas Kellerman, who specialized in estate disputes and seemed eager to capitalize on our family's dysfunction for his own financial gain. They presented themselves as concerned relatives who simply wanted to ensure that Elena's true wishes were honored, but their barely concealed aggression made it clear that they were prepared to wage legal warfare to overturn my grandmother's final gift to the granddaughter, who had always made her feel valued and loved. The assault on my character and reputation began within days of Elena's will reading, orchestrated with military precision by my parents who seemed determined to recruit every available family member into their campaign of emotional terrorism, designed to force me into surrendering my inheritance. Robert and Maria Martinez transformed into master propagandists, spinning elaborate tales about my alleged manipulation of their elderly mother, while conveniently omitting any mention of Elena's mental acuity, independent decision-making, or deep frustration with Stephanie's entitled attitude toward family assets. Extended family members who had maintained warm relationships with me for years suddenly became cold and distant, their conversations peppered with pointed questions about my financial situation and thinly veiled suggestions that perhaps I should consider what would be best for family unity, rather than my own selfish interests. Cousin after cousin called to express their concern about the family being torn apart by greed, never acknowledging that the greed in question belonged entirely to those who refused to respect Elena's legal right to dispose of her own property, according to her personal values and preferences. The character assassination campaign extended beyond our immediate family circle, when someone began calling my workplace at Dallas Children's Medical Center, spreading rumors about my alleged financial desperation, and suggesting that I might be stealing from patients or their families to supplement my income. The anonymous caller claimed to be a concerned family member, who felt obligated to warn the hospital administration about my deteriorating mental state, and the poor judgment I had displayed in manipulating my dying grandmother for financial gain. These malicious phone calls triggered a formal human resources investigation that required me to undergo psychological evaluation and financial auditing while my professional reputation hung in the balance, causing immense stress during a period when I was already struggling to process my grief over Elena's death and the unexpected responsibility of managing her estate. The hospital administrators were professional, but clearly concerned about employing someone whose own family members were questioning her mental stability and ethical judgment. Stephanie's manipulation tactics reached new levels of sophistication when she announced to the family that she was pregnant and desperately needed the stability and space that Elena's house could provide for her growing family, tugging at everyone's heartstrings while neglecting to mention that she had actually undergone tubal ligation surgery 2 years earlier. This fabricated pregnancy became the emotional centerpiece of her campaign to overturn the will, allowing her to position herself as a vulnerable expectant mother being denied her rightful inheritance by a selfish sister who cared more about money than family welfare. Derek Collins stepped up his involvement in the intimidation campaign, appearing at my apartment complex multiple times per week under various pretexts, always managing to corner me in parking lots or laundry facilities where he could deliver veiled threats about family loyalty and the consequences of fighting against people with significant financial resources. His construction industry connections gave him an air of blue-collar authenticity that my parents found appealing, and they encouraged his increasingly aggressive involvement in pressuring me to abandon my legal rights for the sake of family harmony. The psychological warfare intensified when they began targeting Emma directly, using my 7-year-old daughter as an unwitting weapon in their campaign to break my resolve and force me into submission. During a supervised visit arranged by my trusting nature, Stephanie spent hours filling Emma's innocent mind with confusing adult concepts about fairness, family obligations, and the importance of sharing with people who needed things more than we did. Emma came home asking heartbreaking questions about why I was being mean to Aunt Stephanie, and whether we could just give her the house, so everyone would stop being angry all the time. My financial situation became increasingly precarious as legal fees mounted, and I was forced to take additional shifts at the hospital, while simultaneously dealing with the emotional exhaustion of defending myself against constant family attacks. The retainer for attorney Sarah Chun had depleted my modest savings account, and Elena's estate remained tied up in legal challenges that prevented me from accessing any resources that might have helped stabilize my situation during this crisis period. Jennifer Walsh, a fellow pediatric nurse who had become my closest friend at the hospital, began noticing the physical toll that this family warfare was taking on my health and emotional well-being, offering practical support and a listening ear during my darkest moments of doubt. Jennifer had witnessed similar family dynamics in her own extended family, and recognized the classic patterns of financial abuse and emotional manipulation that were being deployed against me with ruthless efficiency. The pressure reached a breaking point when Emma came home from school one day and announced that she wished we could just give Stephanie the house so our family could be happy again like it used to be. Her innocent words piercing my heart, because I realized that my 7-year-old daughter was being forced to carry the emotional burden of adult conflicts that should never have involved her pure and loving spirit. That night, as I held Emma while she cried herself to sleep, I seriously considered whether preserving Elena's gift was worth the psychological damage being inflicted on the most important person in my life. Despite the overwhelming pressure from my family's coordinated campaign, I made the difficult decision to move Emma and myself into Elena's Victorian house, hoping that establishing physical residence would help solidify our legal claim, while providing us with the stability and emotional connection to my grandmother's memory that we both desperately needed during this traumatic period. The moving process itself became another battleground when my parents refused to help and actively discouraged other family members from offering any assistance, forcing me to hire professional movers with money I couldn't afford to spend. The house felt both familiar and foreign as we settled into rooms that held precious childhood memories, but now carried the weight of legal uncertainty and family hostility that threatened to overshadow Elena's loving legacy. Emma was thrilled to have her own bedroom with space for all her toys and books, and I tried to focus on creating a stable home environment for her while navigating the increasingly complex legal challenges that seemed to multiply with each passing day. Our period of peaceful adjustment was short-lived, as the vandalism campaign began almost immediately after neighbors observed our moving trucks and reported our residence to my parents through their extensive community network. The first incident involved broken windows on the ground floor, with rocks thrown hard enough to shatter the original stained glass panels that Elena had treasured for their historical significance and artistic beauty, causing both financial damage and irreplaceable loss of family heritage. The vandalism escalated quickly from property damage to psychological terrorism designed to make us feel unsafe and unwelcome in our own home. With dead animals appearing on our front porch each morning and spray-painted messages on our garage door questioning my right to live in a house that belonged to the real family members, who deserved Elena's respect and generosity. These incidents occurred with suspicious regularity and precision, suggesting coordination rather than random acts of neighborhood mischief. Our utility services became weapons in the harassment campaign when someone with inside knowledge of our account information repeatedly called to cancel our water and electricity, forcing me to spend hours on hold with customer service representatives while providing identification and proof of residence to restore essential services. The utility companies eventually flagged our accounts for special protection, but not before Emma and I endured several days without running water or refrigeration during the Texas summer heat. Stephanie's legal strategy evolved to include filing false police reports claiming that Emma and I were trespassing on family property, forcing local law enforcement to respond to domestic disturbance calls that painted me as an unstable individual who was illegally occupying my deceased grandmother's residence. These reports required me to repeatedly prove my legal right to live in the house, while being treated like a criminal by officers who had been given completely inaccurate information about the estate situation. The most devastating attack came when someone with access to Elena's personal papers broke into the house during my work shift and stole important documents from her antique desk, including family photographs, personal letters, and financial records that might have provided additional evidence of her mental competency and decision-making process. The break-in felt like a violation of Elena's private space, and a theft of irreplaceable family history that went far beyond simple property crime. Thomas Kellerman, Stephanie's attorney friend, attempted to exploit this theft by presenting what he claimed was a newly discovered document that supposedly represented Elena's revised final will, giving the house to Stephanie while leaving me with only a small cash inheritance that reflected my grandmother's alleged disappointment with my life choices. The document was obviously forged, with handwriting that barely resembled Elena's distinctive script and legal language that contradicted her established preferences for simple, direct communication. Detective Maria Rodriguez from the Dallas Police Department seemed strangely sympathetic to my family's version of events, treating their complaints with more seriousness than the legitimate crimes being committed against Emma and me on a daily basis. Her investigation focused primarily on whether I might be mentally unstable rather than on identifying the perpetrators of ongoing harassment and property destruction, suggesting that someone had influenced her perspective before she ever met with me directly. Emma's emotional state began deteriorating under the constant stress of living in what felt like a war zone, with my brave little girl asking increasingly sophisticated questions about why people who claimed to love us were working so hard to hurt us. She started having nightmares about bad people coming to take away our house, and began checking locks and windows obsessively, displaying anxiety behaviors that no 7-year-old should ever have to develop as survival mechanisms. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had known Elena for over 30 years, became an unexpected ally when she began documenting the harassment incidents with photographs and detailed written logs that would later prove crucial in establishing the pattern of coordinated intimidation. Margaret Patterson was a retired schoolteacher with sharp observation skills and natural protective instincts toward children, and she quickly recognized that Emma and I were being systematically targeted by people who should have been providing support during our time of grief and adjustment. Sarah Chun, my attorney, initiated a financial investigation into Elena's estate that revealed disturbing patterns of account activity during the months preceding her death, suggesting that someone with access to her banking information had been manipulating her finances in preparation for challenging any will that didn't align with their predetermined expectations. These discoveries transformed our defensive legal strategy into a potential criminal investigation that would expose the true scope of my family's conspiracy against Elena's final wishes and my rightful inheritance. The financial investigation conducted by Sarah Chen's forensic accounting team uncovered a web of financial manipulation that extended far beyond simple inheritance disputes, revealing systematic elder abuse that had been occurring for months before Elena's death while she was vulnerable and potentially unable to recognize the scope of the betrayal being orchestrated by her own family members. Bank records showed unauthorized withdrawals totaling $85,000 from Elena's savings and investment accounts, executed through a power of attorney document that my parents had convinced her to sign during a period when medications were affecting her cognitive clarity. Medical records obtained through legal subpoena painted a disturbing picture of healthcare fraud, with Elena's primary physician Dr. Michael Stevens prescribing unnecessary psychoactive medications that could have impaired her mental acuity and decision-making capacity during the crucial period when family members were pressuring her about estate planning decisions. The medication regimen included powerful sedatives and anti-anxiety drugs that had no medical justification based on Elena's actual health conditions, suggesting that someone had been influencing her medical care to create windows of vulnerability for financial exploitation. The conspiracy involved multiple participants working in coordinated fashion to position themselves for maximum financial gain from Elena's death, with my parents serving as the primary orchestrators while Stephanie and Derek provided legal and construction industry expertise to support their elaborate scheme. Phone records revealed dozens of calls between the conspirators during Elena's final months, often occurring immediately before or after visits to her home where they would have had access to her personal papers and financial information. Derek Collins's involvement extended beyond simple family loyalty when we discovered that his construction company had been hired to assess Elena's house for renovation needs, providing grossly inflated estimates that would supposedly justify transferring ownership to someone with greater financial resources to maintain the property. His professional assessment claimed that the house required over $150,000 in immediate repairs to remain habitable, contrasting sharply with independent evaluations that found only minor maintenance issues that any competent homeowner could address with normal upkeep efforts. Stephanie's pregnancy claim, which had been the emotional cornerstone of her inheritance challenge, was definitively exposed as fraudulent when medical records revealed her tubal ligation surgery performed 2 years earlier at Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas. The surgical documentation proved that she was physically incapable of pregnancy, yet she had maintained this deception for months while accepting congratulations from family members and using her fictional condition to justify her desperate need for Elena's house and financial resources. The scope of the harassment campaign became clearer when private investigator Marcus Thompson discovered social media coordination between family members and their friends, with organized efforts to damage my professional reputation through false reviews and complaints to medical licensing boards. These attacks were designed to destroy my ability to support Emma financially, forcing me into a position where surrendering Elena's inheritance might seem like the only viable option for preserving my daughter's welfare and my own professional survival. Emma's school incident marked a dangerous escalation when Derek Collins appeared at her elementary school claiming to be conducting a family welfare check, attempting to interview my 7-year-old daughter about our living conditions and my emotional stability without my knowledge or permission. Teachers immediately recognized the inappropriate nature of his visit and contacted me while refusing Derek access to Emma, but the incident demonstrated how far the conspiracy was willing to go to gather information that could be used against me in custody proceedings. Robert Martinez's workplace confrontation occurred when he appeared at Dallas Children's Medical Center in an intoxicated state, demanding to speak with hospital administrators about my allegedly unstable mental condition and my unfitness to work with vulnerable pediatric patients. Security guards were forced to escort him from the premises while he shouted about ungrateful daughters and family destruction, creating a public spectacle that further damaged my professional reputation despite his obvious emotional instability and inappropriate behavior. The hospital administration's response to my family troubles became increasingly problematic, as they began questioning whether my personal conflicts might affect my patient care responsibilities, suggesting that I consider taking extended leave until my legal situation resolved itself. This pressure threatened my primary source of income during the period when I most needed financial stability to fund my legal defense against the coordinated family attack on Elena's will and my custodial rights over Emma. Margaret Patterson's witness statements provided crucial documentation of the harassment pattern, with her detailed logs showing that vandalism incidents occurred with suspicious timing immediately after family visits or court filings, suggesting insider knowledge of our movements and legal strategy. Her photographs captured license plate numbers and facial recognition evidence that would later prove essential in connecting the conspiracy participants to specific criminal acts against our property and personal safety. Marcus Thompson's private investigation expanded beyond financial fraud to encompass potential criminal violations including elder abuse, harassment, conspiracy to defraud, and filing false police reports, building a comprehensive case that transformed our civil dispute into a potential criminal prosecution with serious consequences for all participants. His professional expertise in white-collar crime investigation revealed sophisticated planning and coordination, that went far beyond spontaneous family disagreement over inheritance distribution. The deeper we dug into the conspiracy, the more apparent it became that Elena's death had been anticipated and planned for by family members who viewed her primarily as a financial resource, rather than a beloved matriarch whose wishes deserved respect and legal protection. Their behavior represented a fundamental betrayal of family bonds and elder care responsibilities that would have horrified Elena if she had lived to witness the destruction her death had unleashed among the people she had loved and trusted most. The legal warfare reached maximum intensity when Thomas Kellerman filed a coordinated assault of simultaneous lawsuits designed to overwhelm my limited resources and force me into surrender through sheer financial exhaustion and emotional devastation. The estate challenge questioned Elena's mental competency during her final months, while custody proceedings suggested that Emma's welfare was being compromised by my allegedly unstable mental condition and the inappropriate stress of living in disputed property during ongoing legal battles that were affecting her psychological development. The defamation lawsuit claimed that my public statements about family harassment and financial manipulation had damaged Stephanie's reputation and business interests, seeking monetary damages that would have bankrupted me even if I successfully defended against the other legal challenges. This three-pronged attack required separate legal representation for each case, multiplying my attorney fees beyond any reasonable person's ability to sustain while maintaining employment and caring for a young child. My parents organized what they termed a family intervention, bringing together aunts, uncles, and cousins from across Texas to participate in a coordinated pressure campaign designed to make me feel isolated and overwhelmed by the unanimous family opposition to my inheritance claim. The intervention took place at my parents' house without Emma present, creating an intimidating atmosphere where multiple adult relatives could take turns explaining why I should prioritize family harmony over my own selfish desires for financial security and independent living. Uncle Fernando Martinez, my father's older brother, served as the family spokesman during this intervention, delivering an emotional speech about Elena's true intentions and the importance of maintaining family unity during difficult times, suggesting that my stubborn refusal to compromise was dishonoring our grandmother's memory and destroying relationships that had taken decades to build. His words carried special weight because he had been Elena's favorite nephew and had maintained a close relationship with her throughout her life. Aunt Carmen Rodriguez, my mother's sister, focused her intervention comments on Emma's welfare, arguing that no 7-year-old child should be forced to live in the middle of such intense family conflict, and suggesting that perhaps temporary custody arrangements with more stable family members might be in Emma's best interests until the legal situation resolved itself. Her suggestion that I was an unfit mother hit me harder than any of the financial or legal attacks, because it targeted my deepest fear about failing to protect my daughter from adult conflicts. The intervention concluded with a formal family vote expressing unanimous support for Stephanie's inheritance claim and unanimous concern about my mental health and judgment, creating an official record that could potentially be used in custody proceedings to demonstrate that even my closest relatives questioned my fitness as a parent. They presented this vote as evidence of family consensus rather than coordinated manipulation, but the predetermined outcome revealed the extent of my parents' influence over extended family members who had limited information about the actual legal and financial details. Stephanie's coach testimony during Emma's supervised visit represented a new low in terms of using my daughter as a weapon against me, with my sister spending hours teaching Emma to express concerns about my emotional stability and our living situation using language that no 7-year-old would naturally employ. Emma came home confused and frightened, repeating phrases about feeling scared of my anger and wanting to live with family members who could provide better stability and care. The Child Protective Services investigation launched based on anonymous reports claiming that I was emotionally abusing Emma by forcing her to live in disputed property, while exposing her to adult conflicts that were beyond her developmental capacity to understand or process healthfully. CPS caseworker Linda Johnson interviewed Emma at school using leading questions that reinforced the concerns raised in the anonymous reports, creating an official record of potential parental unfitness that could support custody modifications. My financial situation reached a breaking point when legal costs exceeded $40,000, forcing me to take a loan against Elena's house while simultaneously facing the possibility that I might lose the property through adverse legal judgment, creating a devastating catch-22 scenario where defending my inheritance was destroying my financial stability, regardless of the ultimate outcome. The stress of mounting debt combined with the emotional toll of family betrayal began affecting my work performance and physical health in ways that supported my family's claims about my deteriorating mental condition. The hospital administration's decision to place me on administrative leave pending resolution of my personal legal issues effectively ended my income during the period when I most needed financial resources to continue my legal defense, creating a downward spiral that seemed to validate every claim my family had made about my poor judgment and unstable life circumstances. Human Resources cited patient safety concerns and the need to maintain professional standards, but their decision felt like another coordinated attack on my ability to support Emma and fight for our rights. Extended family isolation became complete when the last few relatives who had maintained neutral positions were convinced by my parents' propaganda campaign to cut off contact with Emma and me, leaving us truly alone except for the few professional allies who were being paid to support our legal position. Cousin Isabella Martinez, who had been Emma's favorite relative besides Elena, sent a heartbreaking letter explaining that she couldn't maintain contact while the family was so divided, but that she hoped everything would work out for the best for everyone involved. Emma's psychological deterioration reached a critical point when she asked me directly why nobody in our family loved us anymore, and whether we had done something wrong that made everyone want to punish us. Her innocent questions revealing the profound impact that adult conflicts were having on her sense of security and family belonging. That conversation nearly broke my resolve completely, as I realized that fighting for Elena's gift might be causing more damage to my daughter than simply surrendering to my family's demands and starting over somewhere else. Stephanie's emergency petition claiming that Emma needed protective custody represented the final assault in their campaign to destroy my parental rights and force me into complete surrender, with allegations that my mental instability and financial desperation were creating an unsafe environment for a vulnerable child who deserved better care than I was capable of providing. The petition included supporting statements from family members and friends who testified to their concerns about Emma's welfare based on limited interactions and second-hand information provided by my parents and sister. Standing alone in my attorney's office reviewing the emergency custody petition while Emma played quietly in the waiting room, I reached the lowest point of my entire life, seriously considering whether the people who claim to love her might actually be better equipped to provide the stability and security that every child deserves, regardless of the legal and moral wrongness of their methods for achieving custody. The counterattack began when private investigator Marcus Thompson presented a comprehensive report that transformed our defensive legal strategy into an offensive assault on the conspiracy that had been orchestrating my family's systematic destruction of Elena's final wishes and my fundamental rights as both her granddaughter and Emma's mother. Marcus had spent weeks following money trails, interviewing witnesses, and gathering documentary evidence that revealed the sophisticated planning and coordination behind what initially appeared to be spontaneous family conflicts over inheritance distribution. Medical expert Dr. Patricia Williams, a respected geriatrician with 40 years of experience treating elderly patients, reviewed Elena's complete medical records and provided devastating testimony about the suspicious medication patterns that had been affecting my grandmother's cognitive function during her final months of life. Dr. Williams identified multiple prescriptions that had no medical justification based on Elena's actual health conditions, suggesting that someone had been influencing her health care to create periods of vulnerability when important legal documents could be signed or financial decisions could be manipulated. Martha Stevens, Elena's longtime banker at First National Bank of Dallas, provided crucial testimony about the unusual account activities she had witnessed during Elena's final months, including visits from family members who seemed unusually interested in account balances and withdrawal procedures rather than Elena's general welfare or banking needs. Martha's professional experience had raised red flags about potential elder abuse, but she had been told by family members that everything was being handled appropriately by responsible relatives. Independent contractor James Murphy provided legitimate assessment of Elena's house that completely contradicted Derek Collins's fraudulent repair estimates, finding only minor maintenance issues that could be addressed for less than $5,000 rather than the $150,000 Derek had claimed were necessary for basic habitability. James had 30 years of experience in residential construction and historic home preservation, giving his professional opinion significant credibility in comparison to Derek's obvious conflict of interest and financial motivation. Handwriting analysis expert Dr. Rebecca Foster examined the supposedly newly discovered will that Thomas Kellerman had presented as evidence of Elena's changed intentions, determining conclusively that the document had been forged using sophisticated tracing techniques that attempted to mimic Elena's distinctive handwriting style, while incorporating legal language that contradicted her established communication patterns. The forgery was professionally executed, but contained subtle inconsistencies that revealed its fraudulent nature under expert scrutiny. Margaret Patterson's comprehensive witness statements provided detailed documentation of the harassment campaign that had been targeting Emma and me since we moved into Elena's house, with photographs, dates, times, and specific descriptions of incidents that established a clear pattern of coordinated intimidation designed to force us to abandon our legal rights. Margaret's credibility as a retired educator and longtime community member gave her testimony special weight with law enforcement and court officials. Emma's sessions with child psychologist Dr. Amanda Foster revealed the sophisticated manipulation techniques that family members had been using to turn my daughter against me, including coaching her to use adult language about family conflicts and encouraging her to express preferences for living arrangements that aligned with the custody modification goals. Dr. Foster's professional expertise in childhood trauma and family dynamics provided crucial insight into the psychological damage being inflicted on Emma through adult manipulation. Computer forensics expert David Chun analyzed social media campaigns and digital communications that revealed the coordinated nature of attacks on my professional reputation, with multiple family members and their friends posting negative reviews and filing complaints designed to destroy my ability to maintain employment in the healthcare field. The digital evidence showed planning and coordination that extended far beyond spontaneous family disagreements about inheritance distribution. Financial recovery proceedings forced Stephanie and my parents to reveal hidden assets and financial transfers that had been concealed during the initial estate proceedings, exposing additional fraud and deception that strengthened our case, while providing potential sources for monetary damages that could compensate for the destruction they had caused to my career and Emma's emotional well-being. These discoveries transformed our defensive position into a potential criminal prosecution with serious consequences. Stephanie's attempted flight to Derek's family property in Oklahoma demonstrated consciousness of guilt when faced with mounting evidence of fraud and conspiracy, with law enforcement tracking her movements and preventing her departure while additional evidence was being gathered. Her flight attempt provided powerful evidence of criminal intent that would later influence judicial decisions about credibility and appropriate sanctions for frivolous litigation. The comprehensive evidence-gathering process took nearly 6 months to complete, during which time Emma and I lived in a state of suspended animation, while waiting for justice to prevail against the coordinated assault on our fundamental rights and Elena's legal legacy. Each piece of evidence strengthened our position while revealing additional layers of deception and manipulation that had been carefully planned and executed by family members who viewed Elena primarily as a financial resource rather than a beloved matriarch whose wishes deserved respect and protection. Sarah Chen's legal team worked methodically to build an ironclad case that would not only vindicate Elena's final wishes, but also expose the criminal behavior that had been masquerading as legitimate family concern about inheritance equity and Emma's welfare. The evidence revealed a conspiracy that extended far beyond civil estate disputes into criminal territory involving elder abuse, fraud, perjury, and conspiracy to deprive me of my civil rights through coordinated harassment and legal manipulation. By the time we were ready for trial, our evidence file included bank records, medical documentation, witness statements, expert testimony, digital forensics, handwriting analysis, and comprehensive documentation of criminal harassment that painted a complete picture of systematic abuse perpetrated by family members who had betrayed every principle of love and loyalty that Elena had tried to instill in her descendants throughout her remarkable life. The pretrial maneuvering reached fever pitch when Thomas Kellerman made increasingly desperate settlement offers designed to avoid the public exposure of his client's fraudulent behavior. But Sarah Chun and I rejected every proposal, because we demanded full accountability for the systematic abuse and criminal conspiracy that had nearly destroyed Emma's childhood, and my fundamental rights as Elena's chosen heir. The settlement offers revealed their recognition that the evidence against them was overwhelming, and that a public trial would expose criminal behavior that could result in prosecution beyond mere civil liability. Judge Harrison Montgomery, a distinguished jurist with 30 years of experience in estate and family law, presided over proceedings that would determine not only the validity of Elena's will, but also the appropriate sanctions for the coordinated campaign of harassment and fraud that had been perpetrated against us by people who should have been providing support during our time of grief and adjustment. His reputation for fairness and intolerance of courtroom manipulation made him the ideal judicial officer to handle such a complex case involving multiple legal violations. Sarah Chen's opening statement methodically outlined the comprehensive evidence of elder abuse, financial fraud, document forgery, harassment, and conspiracy that would be presented over the following days, painting a picture of systematic criminal behavior disguised as legitimate family concern about inheritance equity and child welfare. Her presentation was professional and devastating, establishing the framework for understanding how Elena's simple desire to leave her house to the granddaughter, who truly appreciated its emotional significance, had been transformed into a criminal conspiracy for financial gain. Thomas Kellerman's opening statement for the defense attempted to portray Stephanie as a concerned family member, who was simply trying to protect Elena's true intentions from manipulation by a granddaughter, whose financial desperation had compromised her judgment and moral character. But his arguments rang hollow against the mountain of documentary evidence that contradicted every major claim about Elena's mental state and true wishes regarding property distribution. Robert and Maria Martinez took the witness stand with obvious reluctance, their testimony revealing multiple contradictions and memory lapses that exposed the coordinated lies they had been telling family members and law enforcement throughout the inheritance dispute. Under cross-examination by Sarah Chun, they were forced to admit their unauthorized access to Elena's bank accounts and their role in convincing her doctor to prescribe unnecessary medications that could have affected her cognitive function during crucial decision-making periods. My father's testimony became particularly damaging when he admitted under oath that he had withdrawn $85,000 from Elena's accounts without her explicit permission, claiming that he was simply protecting family assets from potential nursing home costs that never materialized before her death. His defensive anger during cross-examination revealed the entitled attitude that had motivated his criminal behavior against his own mother's clearly expressed legal wishes. Stephanie's testimony was a masterclass in evasion and deception, but Sarah Chen's methodical questioning exposed multiple lies about her pregnancy claim, her knowledge of Derek's harassment campaign, and her involvement in the document forgery scheme that had attempted to overturn Elena's legitimate will. Her performance on the witness stand revealed the calculating nature that had always been hidden beneath her victim persona. Derek Collins's breakdown under cross-examination provided dramatic evidence of criminal intent when he admitted to making threats against Emma and me while acknowledging his role in the property damage campaign that had been designed to force us to abandon our legal rights through intimidation and fear. His testimony revealed the extent of physical harassment that had been coordinated with the legal and financial attacks, creating a comprehensive assault on our ability to remain in Elena's house. Dr. Patricia Williams's expert testimony about Elena's medical records provided devastating evidence of healthcare fraud, with her professional analysis demonstrating that the unnecessary medications prescribed during Elena's final months had no medical justification and could have been intended to create periods of cognitive impairment when important legal decisions were being influenced by family members with financial motivations. Forensic accountant Michael Rodriguez presented a detailed analysis of the financial manipulation scheme that had been systematically draining Elena's accounts, while positioning family members to challenge any will that didn't align with their predetermined expectations for inheritance distribution. His testimony revealed sophisticated planning that had been occurring for months before Elena's death, demonstrating premeditation and criminal intent. Multiple character witnesses testified to my integrity as both a healthcare professional and a devoted mother, with colleagues, neighbors, and friends providing evidence that contradicted every claim about my mental instability or inability to provide appropriate care for Emma. Their testimony painted a picture of a dedicated single mother, who had been systematically targeted by family members whose greed had overcome their natural obligations of love and support. The climactic moment arrived when Emma was called to provide testimony in Judge Montgomery's private chambers, where her innocent honesty would finally expose the last remaining lie in Stephanie's defense strategy. At 7 years old, Emma possessed a natural truthfulness that cut through all the adult deception and manipulation that had characterized this entire legal proceeding. Emma's devastating question, delivered with the pure honesty that only children possess, revealed that Stephanie had explicitly told her that Grandma Elena had wanted Stephanie to have the house, but that Mommy had stolen it through selfish manipulation, directly contradicting Stephanie's sworn testimony that she had never made any claims about Elena's true intentions, or attempted to influence Emma's perceptions about the inheritance dispute. This final lie, exposed by a child's innocent recounting of adult conversations, provided the conclusive evidence that destroyed any remaining credibility in the defense case. Judge Harrison Montgomery's verdict was swift and decisive, ruling comprehensively in favor of Elena's legitimate will while imposing severe sanctions on all parties who had participated in the fraudulent conspiracy to overturn her final wishes through criminal harassment, document forgery, and systematic elder abuse that violated both civil and criminal law. His written judgment included scathing commentary about the betrayal of family trust and the fundamental violation of Elena's dignity during her vulnerable final months. The criminal referrals to District Attorney Patricia Williams resulted in formal charges including elder abuse, financial fraud, perjury, conspiracy to defraud, and filing false police reports against Robert, Maria, Stephanie, and Derek, with potential sentences ranging from probation to significant prison time, depending on plea negotiations and cooperation with ongoing investigation into their criminal enterprise. The transformation from civil dispute to criminal prosecution sent shockwaves through our extended family and community. Financial recovery exceeded our most optimistic expectations when the court awarded full attorney fees, punitive damages totaling $200,000, and complete restoration of all stolen funds plus interest and penalties that reflected the court's determination to send a clear message about the consequences of elder abuse and inheritance fraud. These monetary damages provided the financial stability that Emma and I needed to rebuild our lives while ensuring that the perpetrators faced real consequences for their criminal behavior. Dallas Children's Medical Center conducted a comprehensive internal investigation that concluded I had been the victim of a coordinated harassment campaign designed to destroy my professional reputation, leading to a formal apology, immediate reinstatement with full benefits, and a promotion to head pediatric nurse that reflected the hospital administration's recognition of my professional competence and personal integrity, despite the family attacks I had endured. Extended family members who had cut contact based on my parents' propaganda campaign began reaching out with heartfelt apologies as the truth about the criminal conspiracy became public knowledge through court records and local news coverage of the elder abuse prosecution. Cousin Isabella Martinez wrote a particularly moving letter explaining how she had been deceived by false information and expressing her desire to rebuild her relationship with Emma and me. Stephanie's marriage to Derek Collins disintegrated under the pressure of criminal prosecution and bankruptcy proceedings, with Derek filing for divorce while simultaneously attempting to negotiate plea agreements that would minimize his potential prison sentence in exchange for testimony against his co-conspirators. Their McMansion in Plano was sold to pay legal fees and civil judgments, leaving Stephanie to face criminal charges without the financial resources that had previously protected her from consequences. Derek's construction business lost multiple licenses and faced civil lawsuits from previous clients who discovered that his pattern of inflated estimates and fraudulent assessments had extended far beyond our family's case, suggesting systematic business fraud that attracted additional criminal investigation by Texas Attorney General's office. His professional reputation was completely destroyed, ensuring that he would never again be able to exploit vulnerable property owners. Robert and Maria Martinez became social pariahs in their community as news of their elder abuse conviction spread through local networks, with longtime friends and neighbors expressing shock and disgust at their treatment of Elena during her final months, and their subsequent attacks on their own daughter and granddaughter. Their retirement years would be marked by criminal probation, financial ruin, and complete social isolation. My healing journey included extensive therapy with Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a family counselor who specialized in helping victims of domestic abuse and family betrayal process trauma while rebuilding healthy relationships and trust in others. The therapy sessions helped me understand that I had been the victim of systematic emotional abuse disguised as family concern, and that protecting Emma and honoring Elena's legacy had been the right choice despite the enormous personal cost. Emma's recovery was remarkably resilient, aided by continued sessions with Dr. Amanda Foster, and the stability of our new life in Elena's beautifully restored house, where she could finally feel safe and loved without the constant threat of adult conflicts destroying her sense of security. Her natural resilience and the therapeutic support helped her understand that some adults make bad choices, but that she was completely safe and loved in our new family structure. The house renovation project became a healing ritual as Emma and I worked with legitimate contractors to restore Elena's Victorian home to its original beauty, while adding modern conveniences that would support our family's needs for decades to come. Every improvement honored Elena's memory, while creating new traditions and memories that would sustain us through whatever challenges the future might bring. My promotion to head pediatric nurse provided not only financial stability, but also professional recognition that validated my competence and dedication despite the family attacks that had nearly destroyed my career, proving that integrity and perseverance could ultimately triumph over coordinated campaigns of destruction and character assassination. The hospital's support during my legal battle had demonstrated the value of maintaining professional relationships based on merit rather than family connections. The closure of our legal victory allowed Emma and me to begin building chosen family relationships with people who valued our authentic selves rather than viewing us as financial resources or obstacles to their personal ambitions, teaching both of us that love and loyalty must be earned through consistent behavior rather than demanded through blood relationships that carry no automatic obligations of respect or support. The final lesson of our ordeal became crystal clear. Recognizing manipulation requires trusting your instincts even when everyone around you claims that your perceptions are wrong. Protecting children means standing firm against adults who would sacrifice their welfare for personal gain. And sometimes the family you choose through shared values and mutual respect provides more authentic love than the family you inherit through biological accident. Elena's gift was never really about the house itself, but about teaching me that I had the strength and courage to fight for what was right regardless of the personal cost, and that Emma deserved a mother who would protect her from people who viewed children as weapons to be used in adult conflicts rather than precious souls to be nurtured and cherished. Standing in Elena's garden with Emma on a peaceful Sunday morning, watching her play among the roses we had planted together while the Texas sun warmed our faces, and the restored Victorian house stood behind us as a symbol of justice and family love, I finally understood that we had not only won our legal battle, but had gained something far more valuable. The knowledge that we could survive anything as long as we held on to our integrity, protected each other fiercely, and never allowed other people's greed and manipulation to corrupt our own capacity for love and forgiveness. What would you have done if your own family had turned against you like this? Have you ever experienced betrayal from people you trusted most? Share your thoughts in the comments below about how you would handle family members who put money before love and loyalty. Don't forget to like this video if you believe justice was served, subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction, and share this with anyone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right is always worth the struggle, even when it costs everything. Thank you for listening to my story, And remember that sometimes the strongest families are the ones we build ourselves through love, respect, and unwavering commitment to protecting those who matter most. May you always have the courage to fight for what's right and the wisdom to recognize the difference between family who truly loves you and people who simply share your DNA.